everybody, this is the Post Movie Podcast. I'm Steve Head, and typically John would say, I'm John Black. John, you do it. Hey everybody, this is the Post Movie Podcast. I'm Steve Head.
And I'm John Black.
And that John Black is Sean Burns, the film critic for The Improper Bostonian and Philadelphia Weekly. Mm-hmm. Man, I want to say this is a rarity because John had to cancel. And we have done something like close to 100 episodes, and John, over the entirety of that, has only once had to cancel at the last minute, and Ed Simkus filled in, and that was actually a show where I lost half of the recording. We did like a review, and nobody cared because it was like a review of The Spy Next Door. So it was like, as long as we got the Edge of Darkness review in, fine. Spy Next Door, good God. It was either Spy Next Door or Toothberry. Anyway,
we can talk about them today if you want.
Oh yeah, that would be great. That would be just wonderful. God, the thing. So John was raring to talk about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and Something Wild. Anyway, long story short, can't believe John's not here, and hopefully police cars and ambulances weren't involved, and hopefully so. Okay. Well, we'll find out afterward. But today, Sean and I, we're going to talk about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. When did that? It's 1997?
1998.
98. And then we're going to talk about Meek's Cutoff, a film I think we both agree just has not gotten the press that it deserves, and I'm in line with it. I digged it.
Probably my favorite thing I've seen all year.
Really? We'll have to elaborate on that. and then I'm going to go to town a little on the John Lennon flick. Now, they're calling it the John Lennon flick when in fact he's probably in the film for maybe a half an hour. So it's really supporting role John Lennon flick being marketed as John Lennon flick. How I Won the War, 1967 Richard Lester flick. But the reason we're here is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, a film that freaking warped my mind. And when John and I were talking about doing the show, we were like, we got to bring Sean in on this. And we tried like 3 times to get together and talk about it, but I think it was like a week or so ago, you said to me something like, you wrote a freaking thesis or something on this.
No,
stuff.
I wrote a screenplay for it. I was obsessed with this book in high school. It was my favorite book. I must have read it 15 times. And I actually sat down and decided because they've been trying to make a movie of it for, since 1971.
Yeah, I was surprised at the different people that held the options. Like,
at one point it was Aykroyd and Belushi were involved at one point.
Huh.
And, but I decided I was going to be the one to pull it together, ambitious 17-year-old me.
Right.
So I actually sat down and wrote an entire screenplay based on the book. And so when the movie came out, I was very dubious. They weren't going to do it right. They were going to get it wrong. And
that's what a lot of people thought.
It was exactly the movie in my head when I read the book, watching it on the screen.
There was one of Depp and Gilliam's major concerns was how Thompson was going to react to the movie. And one of the things, so Criterion has released the Blu-ray disc, I guess it came out a couple months ago, which is basically kind of the same material that was on the 2003 release, but, it's on Blu-ray, so it's sweet.
Yeah, well, I was shitty TV, so I'm not buying it again.
So he, one of the things they do in the extra features is they read correspondence back and forth between Thompson and Depp and Gilliam, so just filled with expletives. That basically this is just like how they talk. And one of the things they were concerned about was what, Thompson was going to think of the film. So Gilliam was kind of playing on the idea that he thought it was a piece of shit after. I mean, he felt like he did something super meaningful, but he presented it to Thompson as if it were a piece of shit. And he ended up thinking, loves it. In fact, there's an interview on the disc that says he had watched it every month, if not more, 12 times a year plus, loving the film. So, good for them.
I think there was a while in the 90s when I was watching it about once a month, too. So.
Really?
I had the original Universal DVD, and then I had to upgrade to the Criterion.
Yeah. One of the things I'm really interested in about this film is, like, you could look at it from, like, 50 different angles. You could go for, like, did they really transpose the book? Did they really get that right? But, is this Depp's point of view? Is this Gilliam's point of view? Did they really get what Thompson wanted? And I think in some way each one of them would say yes, because they all brought something to this, even Benicio. which is he's like a fucking hurricane.
Oh.
I just loved it. Loved his performance in this movie. Even before he was like Benicio, this was really something. In part because he was, an unknown. But I think the critical response to this film is most interesting to me.
I hated it.
Yeah. They brought it to Cannes, I guess, in '97, and they had a lot of high hopes for it, and they fucking ate the movie alive, and it actually killed the whole marketing plan. Well, I guess basically what they did was they ended up spending less money on getting the movie out there because of the way the movie was treated.
No, the marketing was insane because they put it out Memorial Day weekend against Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was as a giant wide release. Like I saw it at a multiplex full of people who didn't know what the fuck they were watching.
Yeah.
And the movie it's a trip.
It is thoroughly a trip. I want to say really quickly, one of my theatrical memory of seeing the film, it was the last film that I saw at the Nickelodeon Theater, which I guess many of us in Boston, if you're listening, know that there used to be a Nickelodeon. There used to be a movie theater across the street from on Comm Ave, across the street from Boston University. It was the last thing I saw there, and I vividly remember the pool hotel room, the floating away in basically shit, floating away in shit. Anyway, so the critical response at the time was, dour. I wanted to go back and find out what the Phoenix said about the movie at the time. But,
it's an incredibly punishing movie to sit through. It is openly abusive to the viewer, and I think I have a problem with it. I do think it's a bit too long. Every Terry Gilliam movie, I think, is 20 minutes too long, anyways.
Yeah.
And it becomes a point. I was watching it again last night, and I was like, Jesus, it's still going.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's when you said it's a trip, basically that is the essential element of the film. If it's not, something like an affront to consumerism or just complete deconstructionist values everywhere, just destroying everything, it's a trip. But what's great about it is it's constructed that way. I mean, the camera is always flowing, moving, like the surfaces are never stable. I mean, it's like a constant assault, and you kind of feel that 3/4 of the way through, and maybe that's what was so trying about it.
Well, and it's sort of by design too that they become so disgusting. Like even if the early fun stuff, like their behavior gets so vile during that last scene with the second to last scene with Ellen Barkin in the diner.
Oh man, that
when
was
Benicio pulls the knife on her, and it's,
that particular scene. That was when they went too far.
I think that's necessary.
That scene where he orders the lemon meringue pie, 35 cents. But you see, it's like they were mean, but I kind of got the feeling they would never actually really do something. Like part of their fun is playing on the idea that they're being twisted and mean without actually really ever going to follow through on it. Like, there's a scene with Tobey Maguire at the beginning where they scared the crap out of him, and they threatened. And, at the end here, they scare the crap out of and threaten Ellen Barkin. But they don't really actually do anything.
No, she's horrified, and the way Gilliam lingers on her face. I remember hearing that the studio was begging him to cut that scene out, and he refused. He said it's so important.
Well, what about taking this movie in pieces? Like, is that how you would recommend watching it? Like instead of doing the whole, I don't know how long the damn thing is. It's 120 minutes.
No, absolutely not. No, you got to go through the whole thing because
But I kind of did it in pieces. Falling asleep a number of times as I was trying to get through it. But I mean, it was like that way. It kind of made it palatable. But also,
I feel like the whole point of the movie is not to be palatable. I mean, it's basically rubbing your face. And
that's a good point. I mean, in the sense that I think what Benicio and Deb are doing are just like having a good time in a way that nobody could really ever have a good time. So it's it's a fantasy. It's a complete another fantasy, and that's kind of what I think Thompson was going for. What was this? He had his theory of gonzo journalism is about let me see if I can remember the essence of that. That is the where good fiction, good journalism, or good fiction is better than any factual journalism.
Oh, it's like Herzog's notion of ecstatic truth.
Oh, I mean, I'm curious. Ecstatic truth. What is that?
Oh, sometimes Herzog just makes up shit in his documentaries.
Like the idea that something can be so true that it's just absolutely, utterly absurd. And I think maybe that's something that Thompson plays with you. Also on the disc is a documentary from the BBC about a road trip that he and Ralph Steadman took in like 77, 78, sort of reminiscing about the 71 debacle. Then he considers this a failure for Fear and Loathing. It was something they'd done in the process of trying to write a Sports Illustrated article, and ended up being... Well, I think what he considers the failure is gonzo journalism. Like you can't really ever just be the eyes and ears of everything and get that on. But the documentary is revealing. And the whole idea of Thompson, I know I'm talking a lot here, but the whole idea of Thompson is like, how does he get away with this stuff? Being such an incredible asshole. But then when he's not an incredible asshole, he's like really, like to get a compliment from him, you must feel like gold. Mm-hmm. But when he's not like that, it's like, man, what a freaking asshole.
Well, I think he got away with it for so long because he was a genius, and the writing was brilliant. And then, when you get to the later years, when he was writing those shitty ESPN columns, the writing was not brilliant anymore. I mean, he basically blew his brains out long before he blew his brains out.
Yeah, I can see that. So you decided to basically write the screenplay?
Yeah, I was in high school. I thought I was going to one who could whip this unfilmable book into shape, and I just transcribed all the dialogue into screenplay format. So
basically, this was like when, the early '90s?
Yeah.
Did you take is this? My thinking is, after talking with you before, that this is kind of the movie that did it. Great filmmaking inspires people. Mm-hmm. Did this inspire you to want to study film?
Oh, no, I had already studied film and everything. I mean, I was more passionate about the book, if anything else. I was suspicious of the movie.
How would you compare this to Where the Buffalo Roam?
It's much better. Because my whole idea of writing the screenplay when I was going to direct this brilliant film was that Where the Buffalo Roam had failed because it was shot like a conventional film. And you had a brilliant performance by Bill Murray as Thompson. But when you have him and Peter Boyle carrying on, and it's just flat, normal camera coverage, they just look like a couple of idiots acting crazy. But
he's surprisingly Bill Murray's featured in the BBC documentary, and I guess they were trying to get this or some version of the film going even as early as like '77, and I was surprised at the close relationship between Bill Murray and Hunter S. Thompson. And then there's obviously the even closer relationship of Depp and Thompson, which is detailed in the extra features and whatnot. So it's like he demands it, or demanded it. But
what makes the movie work is, it's shot through Thompson's eyes, so he's bugging out on drugs. The floor's moving, and
Well, wasn't the movie inevitably a failure? I mean, at the box office, didn't
huge.
It tanked?
Critical box. It was a disaster. It's so funny that the reputation's been revived now, and it came out on Criterion, because the movie was despised.
I'm led to wonder if now that it's more than 10 years old, if this has had any sort of cultural effect on people. Maybe the book more so than the movie, but since we're talking like film preservation and the library, the what do you call it, the Library of Congress, whatever, would this be along the lines of getting in the way the Rocky Horror Picture Show did?
Well, if they still did that sort of midnight thing.
The National Film Registry, that's what I was trying to find.
For the Embassy's 10th anniversary, we showed a bunch of films from 1998, the year we opened. And
really?
Other than The Big Lebowski was the biggest hit, but Fear and Loathing was our second biggest hit. It seems to have become a rite of passage for college kids.
I'm surprised. That's where Gilliam says that he was most surprised that that's the audience that picked the movie up were the kids, the younger one. The ones that where their ideals haven't been smashed and they've, forgotten about all that stuff, and now they're wearing suits and trying to basically get their lives together, be professional and all. The movie didn't fly with them. Apparently, the movie flies with teenagers.
Well, it's that rebellious spirit, you know, that like, fuck everything, let's get wasted, and be completely irresponsible. And you can see why it plays with kids.
Yeah. Now here I'm thinking like John would be like, Steve, you have to listen to. I want to get that Jim Jarmusch audio tape, the one with him and Chaikin. Have you listened to that?
Yeah, I haven't. I should have brought it with me. I didn't. I thought John had given it to me. No, it was
no. I there's an excerpt of it on the disc, and I listened to that. But other than that, I haven't.
Yeah, it came out. I forget when it came out, but it was basically an audio book, but it was produced like a radio drama with sound effects. And Jim Jarmusch was Thompson, and Maury Chaikin was Dr. Gonzo. And they get most of the book on there. It's compressed down to about 70 minutes, I think. But
it was interesting that they apparently did, scenes that weren't included, larger scenes, from the movie. And then apparently Depp, in his friendship with Thompson, was able to find pieces of the book that were edited, that he had taken out, apparently in some files in Thompson's basement. And they added that to the movie. In particular, the scene where they trash the Cadillac out in front of the store. It's fucking hysterical, man.
That is my favorite line when all the elderly people are yelling at him.
Yeah.
And Depp just screams at him, "You people voted for Hubert Humphrey, and you killed Jesus."
If I had to pick a favorite line from the film, and I don't mean to bore anybody with this, but man, when they do the Mint 400, the reason that he's going to L.A., and then they do, it's sort of like a metaphor for war. The Vietnam War. Holy fuck, they're shooting at us. Absolutely. Just terrific. But really, the real star of this film to me is Benicio del Toro. There is a scene, amongst many scenes where they're walking with each other, the greatest of all is which after they take the ether and they enter the casino. Basic loss of normal bodily motor.
It makes you behave like the village drunkard in an Irish novel.
They enter the circus. There's a scene there that Gilliam filmed where he's basically trying to make everything is in motion, nothing is stable, the camera is always moving. Where they're walking along the arcade, and he keeps leaning. Gonzo keeps leaning backward. He keeps leaning until he falls completely parallel out of frame. And I was amazed that when they described it, filming this scene, that they were actually tilting the floors. So all the people that were running the arcades were kind of like tied down, as Depp and Del Toro were like leaning back. I mean, the way they manipulated the reality of it was just fascinating.
And nobody can projectile vomit like Benicio del Toro, and he just starts spattering that car full of tourists with puke.
Oh, that was great. The whole and then the way he does the rear screen projection to disorient people was, terrific. So I highly recommend getting the disc, obviously, of course, because of all the background stuff that you would never be able to pick up on first watching, or on second, or on third. It's pretty deep. So, thank you, Criterion. Have I fawned enough? Have I?
You justified your free copy, I think.
Right? Have I struck enough? Yeah, Criterion. All right, I'm gonna have to edit that part out. But they know I appreciate it, and John does too. So anyway, Meek's Cutoff. Third film from director Kelly Reichardt, who had previously done, I think, Old Joy and Wendy and Lucy, which I loved. It opened a few weeks back, and it's opening in. It's a limited, staggered release. I loved it. Very minimalist, but let me ask you this, Sean. I think some people may want to know that he actually runs the embassy in Waltham. Is the film playing there?
No.
It was sitting. I thought it was for business. I thought
it's only at Kendall, and it's not doing well, and it's already gone from Philadelphia. It's leaving Philadelphia tomorrow, and I'm just on a crusade to get people to see this film.
See, my take on it is this, and let me know what you think. Is that Kelly Reichardt, basically, she's a filmmaker that isn't in a hurry to edit away from stuff. So
we should tell people what it's about first. It's a really complicated plot.
Yeah.
These people are on the Oregon Trail. They go to take a shortcut. They get lost. That's the movie.
1845 Oregon Trail, and they're basically, it's about finding water, but then it's kind of not. It's kind of about basically there's a very subliminal or power struggle going on between the three wagons in this wagon train and the guy who's leading it, Meeks, Bruce Greenwood.
Bruce Greenwood, yeah, under a very large beard.
Yeah, he's terrific. He's really good. Nice performance from Paul Downing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, so Meeks, this loud blowhard, who claims to know where they're going, and all he does in the movie is talk. In a fascinating way too. His command of English is intriguing, to say the least. Yeah. And most of what he's saying is just bullshit. And he's contradicting himself all the time, and these people get sort of conned into following him, and then they're just stuck, and it becomes, when did they break off from?
It's also about who do you trust. There's a moment in the film where they capture an Indian. And they naturally assume that the Indian, because he's from the territory, is going to know where the water is, but they have a communication problem. Nobody speaks each other's language, and
I love that he's billed as the Indian in the credits.
Simply enough, yeah. And you'd think that you'd be able to, he'd be like a barometer, that he'd be able to lead you in the right direction of what's happening.
Well, he could be leading them into an ambush too.
Yes, that they discuss. But I think a lot of people would have a problem with this movie because it's indecisive, and it doesn't offer you much to really, as in like solid truths. It's more like people are constantly wondering what to do, and the movie really, I just want to say, it never recovers from that. It's always like, who do you trust? Which way do you go? I mean, are they?
No, there's such a helpless feeling to the movie where when you don't know where you're going, and it really gets the process of the vastness of the country back then and how slow they move.
She is in no hurry. Michelle Williams and Kelly Reichardt.
It's wonderful because you break an axle on a wagon train, you got to cut down a tree to make a new one.
Right. Yeah.
It's not for short attention spans.
The process of that can be really painful for some people. There's you leave a certain editors know that if you don't edit away from something after a certain amount of time, it either means that the character is going through some sort of real. If you're zoomed in on a character, they're going through a hard thinking process. But to the audience, if you're not picking up on that, it can be fucking painful. So there's a lot that's open for interpretation here.
And she does so much with the space. I mean, for starters, she shot in the 1:3 aspect ratio, which is basically a square box, which nobody shoots films in since the 50s, really. I mean, Gus Van Sant does a lot of these when he does his weird minimalist things, but and I mean, instantly that just constricts your view because you expect you're watching a Western, they get these giant landscape vistas, and instead
and she keeps cutting back to stuff, even repeated scenes of the sky and whatnot. But why? What is it that makes you love this film? I mean,
it sort of just fell into a trance with it. It's more of it reminded me of Jerry or Last Days, that the Gus Van Sant. And that slow meditative process. It actually reminded me also of the first 10 minutes of the Jarmusch film Dead Man. It's just fading in and out while Johnny Depp's riding on a train, where you kind of, you feel your body chemistry kind of slow down during these movies, and you get very contemplative, and so much of this film is there's very little important dialogue, and so many things are. The whole story is told basically with the characters and the relationship to the space they occupy. And that's sort of where all the dramatic tension comes from, and how she frames them within the environment is what tells you the story, which is it's incredibly sophisticated visually.
Yeah, I value that belief in the idea that the director really is saying something even by just focusing on something. But I also think, you gotta like to watch Michelle Williams do stuff.
I can watch Michelle Williams do anything for hours.
I feel the same way too. You gotta when she has a moment with the Indian when she's trying to kind of communicate with them, and in doing so, she decides she's going to sew his shoes. So it's not just done. I mean, it's stitch by stitch.
But even
by
that's
stitch.
fascinating because she has an ulterior motive that if she says, "I want him to owe me something."
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a scene where they take the wagons down a severe grade, and so basically these covered wagons are tethered by a single rope, and the whole process of 1, 2, 3, getting each of those to the bottom of the hill, I guess maybe that's the drama of the film. either that or the one key standoff, but that actually had some women in the audience cheering. And beforehand, I guess I should say that I had been told that this was a feminist Western. I know that my girlfriend Sarah would very much like to comment on that idea about what constitutes a feminist Western.
I wouldn't say so much it's a feminist Western, but the camera very specifically puts you in the women's point of view. I mean, first of all, to use like the boxy aspect ratio, the women are always wearing those bonnets that stretch out for about a foot, so they have no peripheral vision. So she shoots the movie like there's no, you have no peripheral vision while you're watching it. And
they do seem to.
The camera is always hanging back with the women when the men are making the decisions.
Right.
They're very far in the frame, and they're buried in the sound design.
Yeah.
And you can't actually hear a lot of the men's conversations in the film.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that. But now that I see what you're saying, you can see the men off in the distance discussing the important, they're like which way to go kind of conversations, and whether Meek's going to stay with them or you're going to have faith in him or not, and them reacting to it. Zoe Kazan is one of the other women on the.
And the women have to walk behind the wagon train while the men ride horses up front.
I noticed that too, and they would trail pretty far behind too.
And that's sort of the POV, like while not directly shooting from the women's point of view, the camera usually is lingering back there with them.
They were actually making, I think, like the real control decisions. One of the women is the Harry Potter.
Shirley Henderson.
Shirley Henderson, yeah. In trying to exercise to rein in her son, from getting lost, and then the relationship between, I guess, Will Patton being married to Michelle Williams, and they actually have a really, because he doesn't seem to have the machismo of the other couple of guys that are, like
one of them
more
is Paul Dano. There's not a lot of machismo there either.
Oh yeah, I was actually thinking the blonde-haired guy that was kind of second to.
But it's sort of like that. They've all fallen for Meek's swagger, I think, because he's the growling alpha dog who turns out to be full of shit.
Yeah, and but sort of the way it kind of works is that when that goes away, when when at a certain point the people who are in control realize that it's anybody's game. I mean, where does the power struggle? Where does it shift to? And as the audience, we've developed this relationship with knowing Michelle Williams, and she's stalwart, not in a good or bad way, but I mean, she was like I think they sort of realized she was sort of a fallback or something, as in being like just really sensible. So maybe it's a sensibility war. I don't know.
No, Michelle Williams is the perfect actress for these Kelly Reacher movies because there's something about her stillness, but there's so much going on under the surface. You can just see all these things roiling, but I never see her acting.
It plays out on her face.
Yeah, she's so mesmerizing to watch, and even in Blue Valentine. And
Wendy, do you like Wendy and Lucy?
I liked a lot of things about Wendy and Lucy. I think this is a big step up. I thought Wendy and Lucy was a little, I don't know, overplotted.
Dour.
Yeah, and it was just laying it on a little thick, I thought, with the misery.
Well, I think Kelly Reichardt's characters, the mise-en-scène of her films, John would shoot me for saying that, but is that they're living submerged in these real, meager realities, penny pinching or scraping up dirt, it's not a rich universe. It's very simple. And it's very good. So Ed Simpkins would absolutely disagree with me on this.
I read his review because he was so upset with you on Facebook. So I read his review today, and I was trying to understand why he got so upset. And basically, he was just quoting people who liked the movie and making fun of them because it was boring. And I'm like, well, this isn't helping me. If your editor lets you get away with that, great. But
no,
doesn't strike me as criticism.
Dan Kimmel certainly didn't like it. You know,
it's okay if you don't like the movie, but try to understand what it's going for.
Well,
I feel like it's a critic's job. Like, if you hate something, say this is what the film's trying to do, and this is why it didn't work, as opposed to going, I didn't get it.
Well, I've said before, I think a lot of it is you have to want to. And Michelle Williams is like a good, what's the word I'm looking for? She's like an open door. For me, it's like, yes, I'll watch Michelle Williams, and she makes Kelly Reichardt's stuff accessible in a way.
Yeah, it's strange to say that because Old Joy, which I think was actually her third film, but the first to get a theatrical release. I remember sitting through that movie. I thought it was absolutely miserable. I thought it was the longest 70 minutes of my life, and I hated it walking out. And then the next day, I could not stop thinking about it.
Really? That's exactly what Sarah and I were thinking about Meek's Hookup. Mm-hmm. We couldn't decide whether this was good or bad. But we were like, oh, man, we got to read up on this, man. We got to check out, what's the deal with it. It plays with you mentally.
Yeah, it stays with you,
And that's part of the fun of film criticism. That's part of the fun of analyzing these things. We try to put into words what's hard to put into words. So that's not fun for some people.
I guess not. I mean, this thing seems to have some very violent reactions from people. But I mean, good. I'm glad when films do that. I certainly have violent reactions to like The Blind Side. So.
Oh, that's right. And Sarah was like, Steve, okay, got to pick up the new issue of Film Comment, and it's sold out. With Michelle Williams on the cover. So now I'm thinking I got to get Cineast, to do the 4-page Kelly Reichardt interview. So it's like it's prime for deep contemplation.
That's exciting. That's what makes it worth it. I mean, especially this summer, how many friggin' comic book superhero movies am I going to have to sit through, for Christ's sake?
Well, we got Captain America coming up. Get excited.
In 3D, all right.
Get excited. I'm going to move on really quickly to 1967 film, How I Won the War. Mark Lester flick. This just came out on DVD.
Richard Lester?
Oh, right. I just said Mark Lester. Mark Lester is the star of Oliver. Right? And that's what I get for having just seen, like, in the past few weeks, Oliver with Sarah at the party. Apparently, it was like one of her favorite films. So I'm thinking Mark Lester. Richard Lester, 1967. This is a surreal parody of the British war effort in World War II with John Lennon as one of the recruits, one of the privates. And basically, it's just like a series of jokes that are just exceptionally unfunny. A series of surrealist moments that, that kind of break the fourth wall sometimes. I can't recommend it. I really wanted to. I mean, technically, it's a wonderful looking film. I think it has some similarities to Hard Day's Night. It's surrealism. But, it was trying. It looks like they didn't put that much effort into the disc, and I really wanted to like it. As a John Lennon thing, it's like, if you're a fan, maybe you should see this. It'll give you some perspective. It's his first film role.
I'm a big Richard Lester fan, but he doesn't make small mistakes.
Yeah, I really...
He's off by quite a large margin.
This is one of the ones where he's off by quite a large margin. So,
Superman 3.
I would say rent it. I mean, I wouldn't buy it. I mean, it's nice that they brought this one out of the vault and everything, but it just not an entirely pleasant experience. But do rent it if that's something you're interested in. So I think we're good.
All right.
Unless there's anything else you want to recommend in theaters.
No, everyone's still good.
Or reprimand. For being
Go see Meek's Cut Off. It's doing very poorly, but you can save it.
It'll be around. Hopefully it'll stick around. it'll linger as it does. Thanks again, Sean, for coming on.
Anytime.
You can listen to all of our episodes online. We're at post-movie.net. And we're also on iTunes. If you can leave us a review there, that would be fantastic, because any review helps. And we're on Facebook, too. So it's if you want to like us, it's nice to be liked. And if you have any questions, you can email us at contact@post-movie.net. So until next time, so long, everyone.